strokes me, my outer shell or energy shell or whatever. I don't know what the heck he was doing.
So many people are in the rat race,
Right.
and they don't get out of it. They just don't.
Like you say, sometimes you need to. The track is so strong that you need to take yourself to another place so that you're not going through the same kind of. You're not seeing the same things every day and getting caught in this loop.
Okay, we're recording. We're live.
Oh, he's a wanderer. Oh, a wanderer. He wanders around. So today we are going to talk to Uncle Sal about his backpacking adventures around Western Europe.
I think I played the clip at the wrong time.
Play it again. It's smooth.
Hit that back.
Years ago, when I was backpacking across Western Europe. You were backpacking across Western Europe?
All right, Sal, let's get straight into it. So, years ago, when you were backpacking around Western Europe. So tell us how it started, man.
I was backpacking in 2007, ladies and gentlemen, when I had a very good job, actually, at the time in Munich, Germany. I was working in a media company, but something didn't feel quite right. So career-wise, I was in a very good spot of my life. I was living in a very nice flat, shared with other people in the center of Munich, which is a beautiful city, by the way. If you never visited, you should one day. I had everything that you could dream of. You know, the job paid well. The location I was living at was beautiful. I had enough time for leisure and everything. Was in a good relationship at the time. But something felt quite wrong. You know, there was something missing, and there was some kind of deep nostalgia inside of me that, I wouldn't say sadness or depression, but it was something along those lines. And one day, around the corner from where I lived, I met this Argentinian man. He was already a bit older, and he played the accordion on the street. And there was this joy and there was this joy in his eyes. That was incredible. Like, there was so much energy and passion, and the way he also hooked people into listening to him. I really found it fascinating. And eventually, I just talked to him, befriended him. We became friends, and he actually taught me how to play the guitar.
Sal, sorry, I won't interrupt much, man, but just a quick question. So, were you living sort of the big city life, like long hours at work, quite a stressful environment? What was that like? Because I think a lot of people have that dream, you know, I'll leave university and go to the big city.
Yeah, I think that
would be great, and you get there and it's...
Absolutely, it was part of it because it was a full-blown office job. So it was, first of all, there was the commute. It was not nearby. I think I commuted for an hour or so to get there. I'm not sure. Maybe it was less. Probably was less. Then it was like a big corporation. It's like an international corporation with everything that comes with such a job.
Yeah.
So yeah, this guy kind of triggered something inside of me, this Argentinian artist. And so one day, once I felt confident performing in front of people on the street, and once he taught me playing guitar, I was like, okay, screw all this. And I quit my job. I quit the contract on the apartment where I lived in. I said goodbye to my girlfriend at the time.
Jesus Christ. It's just one day, or just in one day?
It did not happen in one day, but it happened over. I mean, there were legal implications of how, I had to quit the apartment, I think with a month's notice or something. The decision fell on one day, yeah. But and as soon as I could get out of there, let's say, I did. I think I had only my guitar with me, a backpack, and that's it. And then I went to the end of the highway, stood there, pulled out my thumb.
And where was your thumb?
Which depends which thumb.
Sorry, mate. So hang on, Sal, but this doesn't. So you've got a well-paying job. Right. Why don't you just fly or hire a car?
Yeah, well, the goal was not to get somewhere. The goal, well, not physically anyway. The goal was to. I don't like this term, finding yourself and all these things, because it sounds very abstract. I didn't plan much. It just happened. It was very as dance style, very organic, you know.
Mm.
So, yeah.
James, you know the answer to that. It ain't about how fast you get there. It's not about
what's waiting on the other side.
it's the climb.
Miley Cyrus has never been wrong.
Hmm.
So,
yeah.
Sal, so yeah, let's get into it. So you walk to the end of the highway, you pull out your thumb, and
Right.
what happens next?
So, you know, I made my way basically to the south. So I made my way I ended up in Switzerland, I think in Zurich, and didn't stay long. And then I took a train, I believe, to Barcelona. And that's the first part is not that interesting. It was mostly me standing in the rain or the snow, waiting for somebody to pick me up. And
quick question, Sal. So
yeah.
that you, on all of the rides that you hitchhiked,
Right.
who was the driver that most sticks in your memory?
The driver that most it's actually from another travel I did years later in Spain, and it was this kind of very stereotypical guy that you think would be out of a movie about some dude in Arizona with a shotgun in the back and his cowboy hat and his boots, and he had everything basically that I was just described except for his shotgun, because I guess that's illegal in Spain. Yeah, he was this cool guy, and he had his huge pickup truck that seemed to be out of a different time, and he was so friendly. Like, he gave me and a friend of mine back then a ride from, I believe, Barcelona almost all the way to Valencia, which was quite a trip. Exactly, and that dude,
a few hundred kilometers, isn't it?
That dude.
And so when you were speaking to all these people, because obviously I'm a teacher and applied linguistics student, how was the intercultural communication? Did you settle on English, or was there sometimes a complete mishmash of languages?
Well, it depends. I mean, the travels in Germany, obviously, I started speaking German with most of the people, also in Switzerland. In Spain, it was a mix of English in the beginning and some bad Italian that by adding just some words at the end of each verb, I made it sound Spanish. But I think after a month of being in Spain, I think my Spanish was quite okay. Communicating was never a problem. Actually, some Spanish people told me that the Italian is very similar to an old style Spanish. It's not spoken much anymore. The biggest problem was getting people to pick you actually pick you up. If you're in the middle of nowhere, like literally in the middle of nowhere, not one soul around, you're at a gas station where maybe somebody dropped you off, because that's like your connecting point. Because not always will people be able to drop you off at a convenient spot. Sometimes they will drop you, or you request they drop you off before they leave the highway, because otherwise it's going to be a nightmare to get back on track. So you often find yourself at a gas station in the middle of nowhere at a very bad time of the day. Either it's in the summertime, it happened to me, either you roasting in the sun, or it's in the winter and it's raining and snowing, and every 2 hours one person pulls up to actually refill the car, and they see you standing there, probably not dressed at your best, probably looking a bit tired and maybe a bit dirty. Not really dirty, but not the sharpest, not the most presentable.
Yeah.
Now go convince them to give you a ride. Good luck. Now, back then, I was younger, and
I was just calculating. 13 years ago, you were what? 35?
I was. How old am I now? I was 24. No.
I think you're 37, Sal, so you would be 24.
Yeah, something like that.
Man, that's a great experience. And I know that there was no ending, but I mean, how did it end? Because you live in a flat these days.
I was in Barcelona, and did all the shtick there and chupitos and meeting new friends, and we also rented an apartment there short term. But then I got bored of the whole drinking only lifestyle, because it's so much, it's fun for a while, but then you can't create a sustainable lifestyle out of it. So one day I heard of the Camino de Santiago, actually, which is this let's say pilgrimage, which classically the route most people know is starting at the north of France and then going all the way to Santiago de Compostela. But I did start in Barcelona, and you can basically start the Camino de Santiago anywhere. You could start it from here in Rome, and some people do it for religious reasons, spiritual reasons. Some do it for sports. Some do it for penitence to make up for something that they did in life. Some do it just to get drunk. By the way, one thing I will note hitchhiking is it happened quite often that, especially when I was hitchhiking with a friend of mine, two guys in the middle of nowhere, you have to sell, in a way, your ride to somebody, you know? And a good way to sell your ride to somebody is with a big, nice sign and maybe a funny thing written on the sign. Because what you're really doing is convincing somebody to put a complete stranger into their car, right? And giving them a ride for potentially a couple hours.
Yeah, you're selling the experience, aren't you, of
Right.
being in the car with you?
So first of all, you have to convince them you're not dangerous. You have to convince them that you're also good fun to be around with, I suppose, because they don't want to be bored when they pick you up. And more often than not, it happened alone or with a friend of mine that we pulled out the signs. And then after an hour waiting for somebody to pick us up, all of a sudden, a car pulled over. Two girls jumped out of the car. Blonde, young, they pulled out, went to the roadside, pulled out the thumb, and what happened? 1 minute later, a car stood there, picked them up, and they drove off. And me and my buddy were just looking at each other, like, what the fuck just happened? You know?
So you can't dangle out these phrasal verbs like that, man. I'm very, very sensitive.
Right. Are you triggered?
A little bit, yeah. Need to have another cold shower, I think.
Yeah, so along the way, what happened in the end? I mean, fast forward, I did the Camino, so it was 2-3 weeks straight walking, more than hitchhiking. And if anybody ever attempts to do that, I would give you at least 3 advices. 1, don't do it in the winter. It's fucking cold. Especially, that's going to be censored. Especially, you have to consider that most structures that maybe cater to this pilgrimage or to this kind of trekking path, let's say, are shut down. so very often you don't know where to sleep, and it's not that it's very cozy in the wintertime to sleep outside in your sleeping bag. Actually, there are many places around there where it's so cold at one point in life, my beard froze in the morning, and you could kind of break it. That's how cold it was, because I was sleeping overnight in an area called Los Monegros, which is like a mountain. Let's say it's a hill along hilly landscape. It's where they shot a lot of cowboy movies, I think, or Western movies in the past. It's one of those.
Near Zaragoza.
Exactly. I came through Zaragoza. I like the way they pronounce it. Joder. And yeah, so don't do it in the winter time. The second is, don't pack up your backpack. Like I had one of those huge backpacks. Don't walk with one of those. Take a small backpack, really strip it down, and don't bring your guitar on top of that while you do that, because I was not only carrying a backpack while I was walking, I was also carrying a guitar. And the third thing is take breaks, and I did not. So what happened in the end is basically with all this weight, I kind of overstrained my leg, and I really screwed up my leg, my whole leg. So I had to rest for a few days, and I had to actually go to a hospital and all kinds of stuff like that. So
did you make it to Santiago?
Yeah, I made it to Santiago. We even went to. I met a group of people along the way, of course. So now I'm saying we because I became we, and we even went to Fisterre in the end, which is part of tradition apparently when you go to Santiago de Compostela to see the end of the world, what was supposed to be the end of the world. Fisterre. One funny thing what happened also during this whole trip was that I got a panic attack. Very funny, because I was carrying too much, and I guess mentally I wasn't still where I wanted to be. Like there was a lot of stuff that had built up over the years. I always felt I had kind of an advantage career-wise, and I got to places early where I wanted to get to. but somehow I either pushed myself too hard, or I just sometimes, you know, you have a goal and you get there full on, but you don't really consider what's around you anymore. And so a lot of stuff had to build up, you know. So I think that came out during this travel, and I had a panic attack, and I also had to be brought to the hospital because I thought it was a heart attack at the time, you know. Obviously it was not. And they were friendly, very friendly there, I must say. Like they all treated me for free. There was no cost involved, and you know, it was a bit messy, you know, like it is in the Mediterranean country, like here in Italy too. But everybody was very humane, and there was and all that. But one day we went up to a mountaintop, and a friend of mine, Juan Carlos, or since he was from Barcelona, Jean Carlos, which is the Catalan version of it. He told me, yeah, there's this guy, we're going to this abandoned place. It's like a community, self-sustained. And this guy is very famous for his healing powers.
Was his name Charles Manson?
Exactly. This guy was famous for his healing powers. And I don't remember, unfortunately, where exactly this place was. But there was this guy, literally, hands like that, running the place. Like he didn't have hands. I had shovels, and I'm not exaggerating. Like it was some deformed, like in my memory, he had this deformed hands. Like they were really big, not just big male hands, you know, like huge, something almost alien, you know. All right. So me and the friends I had made in the meantime, you know, we went to our places and brought our stuff there, and we ate there. There was a kitchen also involved, and it's a community. Everybody ate together, you know, it was nice. And at nighttime, we all got married with, you know, wine and telling each other stories. And then Jean Carlos is like, hey, maybe we should check out the guy and ask him if he can heal you, you know? I'm like, yeah, cool. Yeah, let's do it. I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but at the time, it seemed like a good idea. So we went into the kitchen, you know, and there was nobody there. He's like, sit down, I'm going to call him. I sat down. And I remember somebody stepping in. And Jean Carlos was there to translate. Somebody called me. Yeah, can you take a look at my friend here? He's got problems with his heart. Can you check? I don't really do this anymore. He was like, you know, like fucking rock and roll star. I don't do this anymore. Some convincing was necessary. All right, he got convinced. Steps over to me with his huge hands, and he goes over me like this. Like I'm standing in the center, and he goes over it like, you know, with his big hands. I'm not touching me, but he kind of strokes me, my outer shell or energy shell or whatever. I don't know what the heck he was doing, but he's kind of, you know, going around me. Wait a second. And he goes around my heart. It's like, so you got problems usually with the heart? I'm like, yeah. Okay. Close again. After doing this for a while, you know, and I'm not sure. Maybe he also gave me something to drink, or I don't know if he were trying to drug me. I don't know. I don't like, but it's a blurry, hazy memory. But what I remember exactly was like he's saying, "Tomorrow, you go to the hospital." Like what the heck, you know? I thought he was healing me. Yeah, so that was my shamanic experience in Spain.
Wow.
There's plenty of stories like these actually. It just comes back to me now. I kind of put them all aside. That there's like so many things happening along the way. Also, people who literally were walking back and forth barefoot because they were because they thought they had to make up for something they did in life, something bad, you know. And smart people, like there were some crazy but smart people speaking 5-6 languages fluent, but just walking back and forth. That's what they do all life long.
I think a lot of the most interesting and useful people in life are a little bit crazy. Right. And crazy, not in the medical term, crazy as in compared to society's standards. Right. And not crazy is not working 9 to 5 in an office building. You know, anything beyond that, you're like, oh, you know, such an original thinker. Oh, maybe it's a bit, you know, yeah, there are also other things to do, as you found out.
Right.
We've gone beyond 20 minutes, but I'm really interested in carrying on. Can we carry on for a little bit and break our own rule?
Sure, absolutely. Also, I should have prepared probably a bit for this.
No, so mate, it's interesting.
I haven't prepared at all.
Have you got any questions, Den? I don't know if your microphone's working.
I was thinking, Sal, when you were saying about your panic attack, it's kind. I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't have chosen a panic attack, but it sounds like you almost went out there for a change, and maybe it came in a big dramatic way. You said you had this kind of pent up feelings that kind of maybe all flooded out, and sometimes it takes something like that, doesn't it, to give you that shift.
Right, probably just a session of yoga would have done, but you know, I didn't know about that yet. I haven't discovered that yet. Yeah, I think so. And I must say, at the time, my most happy moment I had, bar none, was in that period of time. Like, I felt the most authentic. I felt the most connected to myself and to nature, especially in the beginning of the travel. You must know, I was completely on my own. And especially when I walked, then, like, let alone the hitchhiking, that's interesting, and you get to meet people and exchange stories. Now I would, and as I said, I should have prepared a bit better, probably prepared a few stories from the hitchhike itself. But
man, I think it's so interesting what you're saying, because so many people are in the rat race, right, and they don't get out of it. They just don't. No. They're in that rat race. They're in that hamster wheel. Bam, bam, bam. Maybe when I get to this point, I'll be happy. You get that promotion, you get that job, you get that new car, you get that new flat. Exactly. You look around, man, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I imagined. So you think, oh, maybe it's up there. Keep going. Another 5-10 years, you sacrifice your life, you sacrifice yourself. Oh, you know, I've got that next promotion. Now it's still not what I want. And you go on and on until you retire. And what happens when you retire? You're so exhausted, and you haven't done anything else for the last 45 or 50 years. And so what have you got to look forward to in the last 20 years? You haven't got any hobbies. You don't have any real friends. You basically destroy your life by just a sheep mentality. So it's fascinating that you went from that rat race and you said, man, this isn't for me. I'm doing well, but I want something else. Because it's a very hard step to take, because it's a step into the unknown.
It was hard, but you know, whatever was building up in me was stronger, or the fear of it controlling me was stronger than doing that, stripping, saying no to everything, cutting it all off, basically. You know, I was cutting off my present life and my past, and I just did something completely different. And yeah, my happiest moment, I think, was during the travel, and in particular, and it sounds weird, because so many things happened, but one moment I really remember very well is I was, I think, staying inside an abandoned train station, sharing the place together with, I'm not sure if it was a drug dealer or a bum or whatever, warming up beans on the heater, like the heater of the room, you know, like not even a burner or something. The heater,
the radiator.
The radiator, that's the name, exactly. So I was warming up a can of beans on the radiator, chatting with this drug dealer, and being just, man, I'm so happy. Like there was some kind of chemical reaction. The drug dealer didn't give me any drugs. Don't confuse that. And also another moment a few days after, when I was standing on a mountaintop all by myself, and just took a moment to stand and enjoy the valley, the view of the valley, and you know, these small things. And it was just a flash, what do you call it? This morning I should have been drinking more coffee. I'm at a lack of words.
Like
a rush of just endorphins and who knows what else. You know, it was just so strong, and I felt really connected to myself, to the nature around me. But it had a lot to do with the fact that I was living a much simpler life, I think. You know.
Yeah, that's it, man. Strip it all back.
At some point, I even disabled my cell phone. There weren't even smartphones at the time. I disabled my cell phone, and I think I probably even threw it away or something, because I just wanted to be completely disconnected from everything and everybody.
So what was the day that you said, okay, that's enough for me, you know, I've got what I'm looking for, or I'm just tired, or how did it finish?
It was a few years ago that I just said, I don't need this travel element to discover myself. I still like to travel, and I still want to do it as much as often as possible. On weekends, when me and my partner we can go travel, we do it, especially now after the lockdown. But it's mostly the intellectual part that I'm interested in, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a journey. It's another kind of journey that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny, Sal, because I was going to ask you something along these lines, and you kind of already answered the question about how your mind state for living a normal life in one place has changed, and what you've learned from the kind of struggles you were caught in before, and then you go away, and then you have to kind of settle down, but you take obviously the lessons that you've learned while traveling. And you kind of answered that, because in a way, so it's like when you're stuck in one place, your kind of mind is in a trap, and like you say, sometimes you need to. The trap is so strong that you need to take yourself to another place so that you're not going through the same kind of you're not seeing the same things every day and getting caught in this loop. So sometimes, so you take yourself out of it, and then you realise the trap you're in, and then you can kind of get clever at just getting out of that trap in your own mind, rather because you've been in and out of it. You know, I hope that makes some sense. But,
no, that makes a lot of sense, because that's where the trap is. It's all up here. It's the centimeters between your ears. That's where all the problems are, and it's also where all the solutions are. And so, I mean, you found the way, Sal, by moving away. But a book that I read recently said something along the lines of, you don't need to go to India to discover yourself, because everything that you need is already here. Of course, traveling can help, but you need to realize it's not the place that's the problem. It's the mind.
I mean, what I would say is that my brain back then was signaling, because I was too close to everything. It was signaling, hey, Sal, it's time to travel, right? And I took that literal, and I basically, told everyone off and left everything behind and moved away. But I didn't understand that you can also travel in your head in a way. And traveling in your head is such a cliche. So it's not that I'm closing my eyes.
I don't think it is, man.
I'm imagining that I'm in France with a baguette in my hand and drinking a coffee in a boulangerie, you know.
Bonjour.
Exactly.
I think a lot of it comes with you're saying about the stories you're exchanging with people while you're along the way. And a lot of the time, if you are looking out for it, you can hear these stories in your own town where you live, or just on a weekend away, but you're distracted. You're not in the same mind state to be open to them. So maybe that's another thing. When you go away, you learn to kind of receive, just to be more open-minded and take a chance to listen and get your head out of the traffic. Does that make sense? A lot of the time,
absolutely.
You could.
I mean, one thing I'd say that you cannot replace is the element, though, of kind of melting, becoming one with nature. I mean, that's either you are very good in visualization techniques and meditation, but that feeling to be really in the open. And doing the Camino, very often I found myself in kind of raw nature, especially if you do the Camino Catalan, which is it's not very touristy until you get halfway. You meet up with the main, let's say, the most popular part of the Camino de Santiago, which starts in France. So the whole trek that basically starts from a monastery, actually, on top of Barcelona, which is a place I still like to visit every now and then.
Also, another thing I'd say that you can't always get in your own town, especially a town like Horsham that me and Den are from, for all its beauty, and we do appreciate Horsham. But you don't always get the cultural diversity. So in Horsham, there's not a lot of cultural diversity. Sometimes you need to travel to immerse yourself in another culture and another way of life,
right,
and another way of thinking, and actually appreciate that when you're the minority, right? And you need to travel.
I remember, this is a really loose reference, but I remember one time hearing about some of the writers that got moved away to a different country during some wartime. And that's where they did their best work, because they had some kind of comparison. You know, they were writing about their own country, but because they were in another place, they could really see what was good about their own country, you know, because they were immersed in a different culture. So you need that opposite, don't you?
Yeah, that's it.
Funny enough,
very interesting.
When you're talking about the immersion in nature and how that brings you a lot of happiness, I remember times I've had this overwhelming feeling like that, and I am just in my own town, Horsham. I'm just running in the woods.
Okay.
And I don't think that's. I've had it enough times to know that it wasn't just something that's going on that day that made me happy. It was this kind of. I wasn't expecting it, and you're just running, and all of a sudden you're just in this state that you're in the woods, the sun's shining, it's glorious, and you really do feel you're not thinking too much. You're just lost in. You're with it, you know.
Yeah, that's it. Being present. Absolutely. Another thing I really enjoyed doing recently, like I said on the previous podcast, in the last, I'd say I've really made a conscious effort. When I stop on my bike, I'm riding around, I stop on my bike and I look at a tree. Instead of pulling out my phone at the red light, I look at the tree and you realize that every single tree is completely different. I got this from our friend Josh, our friend called Jean-Michel, who lives in France. Hopefully we'll have him on because he's a fascinating character. Jean-Mi. He said, look at a tree, man. It's an incredible thing. And it's true, because you look, every single detail is different. You start to think about it, that we are their food and they are our food, because we exchange oxygen and CO2. Wim Hof is big into this as well. And it's just being in that moment. So you can still appreciate nature and be more grateful for everything, even in the hustle and bustle of the main city. Even when somebody's behind you, hey, I'm looking at a tree. Give me a second.
You have to keep a bigger goal in your mind, and very often when you do something like this, you don't have to, quit your job and leave everybody, and you don't have to go to extremes.
Yeah. But you can. Why not?
You can. But in that situation in particular, it takes away all the noise, and your goal becomes get to Santiago or get to one place. So there's one goal, and that's it, and you focus on that. So I think there's also one part of it, and probably it's similar to what it means for you to run a marathon, right? It's a challenge. It's a goal you have, and it's getting there, and then maybe also along the way improving your times and all the other micro goals that come with it. Yeah. And so that's an important part of it, I think, because the sense of achievement, right?
Yeah, but what I've realized, I've realized in the last few years is that it's not about the finish line, because it's actually a moment of sadness when I get to the finish line. In a way, it's a moment of euphoria for some days, and then it's sadness, because what I really enjoy is the process. I enjoy getting up and having something which drives me. I enjoy seeing improvements and learning along the way, and adapting my training and my practices. So what's the link to the
well, maybe then your final goal is not the finish line itself, but maybe it's a time that you want to improve. So it's still something connected to that.
The link is that without the final objective, so I'm saying, the objective's not the most important thing, but without the final objective, you don't get any process. So you have to have an objective if you want. But the important stuff is getting there, not arriving.
You can't trick yourself. You need that. And also, one of our most quoted, Jordan B. Peterson, says a lot about having, if you don't have, you need to look in one direction, otherwise everything is overwhelming. You need to focus on something.
That's true, yeah.
And so when you got that one aim, you can move forward rather than kind of getting bogged down by everything.
Beautiful.
Right.
So that's great, chaps. Should we wrap this one up? I think we could talk for another 3 hours about it, but it's
sure. I think I'll add a few pictures of my
man.
If I find them. I added them into this podcast if I find them.
All right, guys. So we're going to wrap this one up. The Ginger Fox is also known as Joshua William Dennison. My name is James, and most of this one we thank Salvatore Benintende, Uncle Sal, Joe Rogan, for all of his memories and experience. So we are the Three-Headed Hydra.
It's the climb.
And you've been listening, so thank you very much.
Peace.
Why are we making these podcasts? Because 3 heads are better than 1. We'll combine our experiences and research on engaging topics to learn a bit more each time, enjoy the chat, and improve our own communication skills in the process. Innovation comes from the ability to correlate information between different realms of knowledge, and we all have very different realms of knowledge between the 3 of us.
Why the Hydra, you ask? In archetypal mythology, dragons guard piles of gold. Overcoming fears can bring great rewards. What you most need is often where you least want to look, and we won't shy away from the fire to challenge each other and reach that goal.
What's in it for you, listener? Learn, laugh and love. Get involved and join us on this adventure.